let's look at Appendix C. We're talking about presentations. How many of you are giving presentations on a regular basis? Okay, not many, not many. How many of you enjoy giving presentations? Even fewer, all right. Some interesting facts about presentations that you may or may not know is 3 out of 4 people have a fear of public speaking. That's an unusually high number of people to have a fear of something. And when you're talking about phobias, you know, we have these studies where they rank phobias for us. Interesting, in the United States, that a fear of public speaking ranks higher than a fear of death. Okay? So if you think about that, and here's what Jerry Seinfeld did with that information. He said that if you're actually at a funeral, that means that you would rather be in the casket than delivering the eulogy. Okay. So, interesting data, and it means you're not alone. Granted, there are some people who are very comfortable with public speaking, and I'm going to tell you that they're either people who are very seasoned at it, or they're people who are not very good at it. Okay, think about that. We'll talk about that. We're going to do an exercise in a few minutes where we talk about some really good speakers and some that have really bored you to tears. But most people are going to have a degree of anxiety and nervousness about it. I do every time I get up. Every time I get up. I've been doing it for years, but you still have a lot of adrenaline, a lot of nervousness that comes from this process. Let's talk about that. Why is it that it makes us nervous to get up in front of people and talk? Yeah, everybody's watching you. Okay, so what? What else? Something could happen. Like what? Like what? What could happen? Oh, you could be embarrassed. Yeah, you could be embarrassed. And I'm going to tell you something. You could be embarrassed. But I want you to think about a couple of things if you're really trying to work through some fears of public speaking. First one is I want you to think about that worst possible scenario. Okay? People get afraid that they're going to forget what to say. I'm going to go blank. Okay, that could happen. If you're really worried about that, you probably want to have some speaker's notes. You've seen me holding speaker's notes most of today. You don't have to stare at them the whole time. You have them. If you feel like you're getting lost, you stop, you pause, you find your place, and you move on. Okay? So that's one of the things that could happen, is that you could lose your place. People are often afraid of their body, right? We feel as though this is something that we just acquired. When you get up here, it feels like these legs and hands and arms that we got just sort of sprouted this morning, and we don't know what to do with them. They want to walk. They don't know, oh, what am I going to do with my hands? I'll put them in my pockets. Right? We just don't know what to do with these awful appendages. They are just in our way, and they're pointing out our nervousness. Maybe they shake, right? Maybe you turn red. All kinds of things can happen. Right? These things are really about adrenaline that we just talked about. You're going to have a certain degree of adrenaline, but you need to learn how to channel that adrenaline into your presentation. And we're going to talk more about that this morning. Another thing that's really going to help you, and actually is going to work under your first bullet point, we start talking about preparing. Huge believer in preparation. You should never be getting up when you haven't done some sort of prep. Number one, your sub under there is audience. Here's something about your audience. What's the thing that people have always told you about the audience if you're nervous? What are you supposed to do? Yeah, picture them in their underwear. Okay, don't do that. Don't ever do that. Not a good idea, not a good place for your head to go. Just don't do that. Get rid of that idea. Here's what I want you to think about your audience. I want you to think about you as an audience member. All right? If you're going somewhere to hear people speak or train, what do you generally hope would happen? That it's informative, it's interesting, oh, funny, you've got some high expectations. Okay, think about that. You as an audience, you want your speaker to succeed, okay? You don't ever walk in the room saying, man, I really hope this person is boring. I hope they put me to sleep. I hope they're awful. You never want that. You want the person to succeed. So what you have to come in knowing when you're up here in front is that the audience is with you, okay? They really want you to do well. Have you ever had somebody stand in front of the room and they're really struggling or something's going wrong and everybody in the audience is doing what? They're cringing. They're dying for that person. They want to help. They're like, oh, make it stop. It's so uncomfortable for the audience when things go wrong. So we have to keep in mind the audience is with you, okay? They want you to succeed. And think about some of those worst possible scenarios because, I mean, I've had bad things happen to me. I've been up in front of the room with my pants unzipped more than one time. And you know what? I'm still alive. I'm still here. Nothing happened. Embarrassing? Yeah. But it happened. Okay? What you have to do is really work on the step of preparation. If you know your information, if you have it prepared, it's going to come out easier. You've often heard people tell you, speak out loud ahead of time, do it in front of a mirror. I know it's hokey. It works. You have to work on what you're going to say. If you can get yourself saying the words over and over again, then the words are going to come out natural, and you're not going to have so much worry that you're going to forget the words. You also need to be in front of a mirror to see what you look like and how you sound. Your audience composition is another factor that's going to depend both on your how you present and what you present. Your audience can be a group of subordinates. You can be training down or speaking down, which is probably something that you do pretty often. How many of you have group meetings, things like that? Yeah, but that's what? It's generally a very informal situation. Sometimes you even sit down at a conference table, so everybody's like, oh, kick back, right? But that's probably your best possible presenting. You could also be presenting where? Yeah, to the boss. Okay? If you're presenting up to your boss or your boss's boss or your boss's boss, a lot more anxiety. It's a different presentation for you, okay? And there's another situation, exactly, peers. I'm going to tell you an interesting situation that for me, although I don't love to present to my boss or my boss's boss, I'm more uncomfortable when I'm presenting to my peers. Okay? I have often been in training classes with other trainers, and that's one of the most uncomfortable situations because you feel like you're in there with a lot of people who are really good, know their data, know their stuff, and you kind of stick out. But another interesting thing about that, I know I went to one class where we had 40 trainers in the room, and the teacher was very interactive. And every time he'd say, I need a volunteer, you know what happened? He had 40 people hiding under their desks. They were all professional trainers, and they were the most scared group to get up in front of each other because they were all so nervous about presenting to their peers. So we need to know who's going to be there and how that's going to affect you. This is also going to change the tenor of your presentation. Your group, it's going to depend on your humor might be different. Your tools, if you're using PowerPoint or not, might be different. It may be more formal if you're presenting upwards to a boss and if you're presenting to your group. You may be able to have jokes or props. You may not want that with a different group. So these are things that are going to all factor into your audience. You also need to know who's in the room. If you know people who are in the room, is that a good thing or a bad thing? Bad thing? Yeah. All right. See, we got bad and good. They say good over here. You say bad over here. Why is that? If there's somebody you know in the room, your eyes can get stuck on that person. Okay? If you think you have a buddy, you're either going to teach or talk to your buddy and never leave their eyes because that person's back there smiling at you and giving you positive attention, so you're just staring at your person, right? Or it may be the opposite. I tend to not ever look at people I know. If I'm teaching and there's people in the room who I know, I tend to make sure I do not make eye contact with them because it works the opposite for me. They distract me. But we're going to talk about eye contact in one of our sessions later this afternoon. But knowing who's in the audience and where they are is another thing that's going to impact you as far as your preparation.